Guys, in this video, I am going to teach you everything you need to know about JavaScript arrays. Stay tuned till the end of the video. Guys, I have a basic JavaScript file open here where we can run our JavaScript code and learn about JavaScript arrays. So first thing we are going to discuss in this video is why do we need JavaScript arrays? I'm assuming that you know about JavaScript variables. Let's say that I want to save some information into JavaScript variable. I'll create a variable with, let's say, let person name is equal to J. So let's say I want to save name of a person because one person can have only one name. So I'm going to choose to save it in some variable that I'm going to create in JavaScript. Now let's say that I want to save what hobbies this person has. So in that case, what I can do is I can create a variable hobbies and I can say that this person has a hobby of swimming. But now the person can have multiple hobbies, right? Person can have 4 to 5 hobbies. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll just not save it as a basic string here. I need to save it in the form of a list of hobbies that a person has. So that's where we need the arrays. So arrays are basically another kind of variable where we can save the information in the form of list. So the person can have multiple hobbies. For example, person can like music, swimming, traveling, or maybe movies. So any data that we need to save in the form of a list or any data that can have more than one values, we might choose to save it in the form of arrays. So that's why we need arrays in JavaScript. Just having variables is not enough. We need to have a variable where we can save the data in the form of list. So now we know that why we need arrays in JavaScript and how we can create an array variable. So this is basically the syntax of an array, and all elements in an array are enclosed within the square brackets. So the next thing we need to learn, what is the index of each element in this array. Index is nothing but the position of an element in an array. So in an array, the position starts from 0. So we can say that the position of element music is 0 and the position of element movies would be 3 because there are 4 elements in an array. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Now let's say that I want to find the index of any element in an array. So for that we need to learn some methods that we can use to find the index of a element in JavaScript. So now let's assume that I want to find the index of an element traveling. So what I have to do to find the index is, let's say let index is equal to hobbies dot index of. So I can mention the element for which I want to find the index. So here I'm going to find the index for traveling. So that's going to be my index. So what I'll do is I'll console log the index to see what is the result, and we can see it here in the console. So I'll save it. So you can see that the index of element traveling is 2 because the index always starts from 0. So 0, 1, 2. So if I want to find the index of, let's say, swimming, my answer should be 1, and we can test this by changing this to swimming. So my answer is 1. So this is how we find the index of an element, by using a method called index of on an array, that is hobbies. So guys, next thing we are going to learn is how to access any element in an array using the index of that element. Now let's say that I want to access this element in an array. I want to print this element of an array using the index of this element. So how can I do that? So I'll delete all this code. We already know how to find the index of an element. So if I want to access this element using the index and console log it, what I can do is I can say hobbies, which is my array. If I console log my array, it will print the entire array in the log, which you can see here. But if I want to print any single element using its index, let's say I want to print traveling, we know that the index of traveling is 0, 1, 2. So I'm going to do it by hobbies, square brackets, and then 2. If I save it, I'll be able to access that element traveling. And what if I want to change any element in this array? Let's say that I want to change traveling to cycling. So I can reassign that element by writing a command something like this: hobbies2 is equal to cycling. So now if I save it, so now I can see that the second element is cycling. And if I console log the entire array, you can see that in my entire array, my traveling element has been changed to cycling. So this is a way we can access any element or make changes to any element in the array using the index. So now you can relate why index is important. If I want to make any changes to this array, I can do that by using the index of an element. So now we know how to change the existing element in an array. We can also learn about one more thing. Let's say I want to find out what is the length of this array, how many elements are in this array. So for that there is a simple method. I'll do console log hobbies.length and save it. You can see in the log the length of this array is 4 because there are 4 elements in this array. Now let's say that there are 4 elements in this array, but now I want to add one more element in this array. So is there any way I can add one more hobby to it? Now I want to add my another hobby, that is cycling, to this array. So to do that I can use another method, that is hobbies.push cycling. So if I push an element cycling into an array, it will always go and add this element at the end of the array after movies. So if I save it and now you can see that the length is changed to 5. And if I console log my hobbies, so now the entire array is music, swimming, traveling, movies and cycling. So I've successfully added another element to this array. There are some cases in which we sometimes have to remove an element from an array. To remove an element, what I can do is we can use another method, that is pop method. If I do hobbies.pop, what this will do is it will go to the last element of an array and remove it. Let's test this method by saving it. So if I do hobbies.pop, my new array is music, swimming, traveling, because the last element is kicked out of the array with this pop method. What if I do pop 2 times? Now save it. Now my 2 elements are kicked out of an array, traveling and movies, and my final array is music and swimming. Now the limitation of the pop method is that it can only remove an element from end of an array, but there are cases when we have to remove an element, for example, that is not at the end, it's in the middle of an array, for example swimming. So to do that we are going to learn another method that we use to remove an element from any array, and that is a splice method. So I'm going to comment this part and we are going to try a new method to remove an element, and that is hobbies.splice. So in the splice method we basically pass the index of an element that we want to remove. So let's say that I want to remove an element swimming, which is at index 1 in this array. So I'm going to splice 1 comma 1. So this is basically the start index and this is the end index. So if I save it, so now you can see that my new hobbies array is music, traveling and movies, and the swimming element has been removed because we have spliced at index 1. Now let's say that I want to remove both these elements, the element at index 1 and element at index 2. So in that case the start index is going to be 1, but I'm going to change the end index to 2. So it's going to splice an array from index 1 to 2, and we will be left with only music and movies element in the final array. So let's save it and try this. So here in the console you can see that the final array contains music, movies, and it has removed swimming and traveling from this array. So that's how we use the splice method to remove an element from an array. So guys, last topic that we are going to cover in this video is how we can loop over this array. So there are many ways of looping over an array. So what we will do is we will loop over this array and console log each element in this array to learn how loops work in JavaScript arrays. So I'm going to comment this code which we have written here, comment this as well. So to loop over an array we can use a for loop. So I'm going to use a for loop. So I'm going to write some syntax here that we are going to understand. For, and I am going to define a variable that is I for index. I can actually name it index. For index is equal to 0. Index less than hobbies dot length index plus plus console dot log hobbies of index. So this is how we use a for loops in an array. So basically what we are saying is for every index starting from 0 until 3, because hobbies dot length is 4, the last number that is going to be less than hobbies dot length would be 3. So index is going to start from 0 until 3 and it will increment by 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3. For an index 0, 1, 2, 3 we are logging hobbies of 0, hobbies of 1, hobbies of 2 and hobbies of 3. So let's save this Let's see what happens. So in the console, you can see that it is looping over the array and logging each and every element in an array. So it's going over an each and every element in an array. First it goes to music and console log music, swimming, console log swimming. So it's looping over the entire array. We can actually console log index as well. I'm going to console log both index and hobbies of index. So if I save this, we can see that at index 0 music, at index 1 is swimming, at index 2 is traveling, and at index 3 is movies. So this is one way of looping over an array. There is another way where we don't have to deal with index. Let's use another method to loop over an array. So I'm going to comment this for loop here. So I'll be using a method that is a map method to loop over this array. So we can say hobbies dot map. I can name a variable as element and console.log element. So here what I'm doing is hobbies.map. I'm mapping over an array, go to each and every element and console log that element. So here it's a simple syntax. We don't have to deal with index here. So I'm going to save this. So it's going to give us the same result. It's going to each and every element in an array and logging that element. So we don't have to use index to access each element in this case because we are using the map function. So that's all about looping over an array.